Section 6.7 involves graphing and solving quadratic inequalities. It really kind of combines what you just learned with what you already know. So we have inequalities that we are going to graph. So what we're going to do is we're going to put them in the right form to graph them. So I'm going to complete the square. So I have y is greater than or equal to. And so I have x squared minus 6x plus half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. I've taken the 2 out there, so since I added a positive 9 there, I want to add a negative 9 there. So I have y is less than or equal to, and I have x minus 3 squared plus negative 7. So when I go to graph this thing, I have a vertex at 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, and it opens up. So I know that I'm going to be able to use the quadratic formula on my calculator. So I'm going to go and I'm going to find out where this crosses the x-axis. I'll go back up here to the original. So A is 1, B is negative 6, and C is 2. And it crosses at 5.6. So approximately right there. And at 0.345, which is approximately right there. And I've got this parabola. Now, what's different here, I know that it's a solid line because I have a line underneath it. And I know that it's less than, so that's all going to be below this line. So you're combining graphing, like you've already done, with shading, like you've already done. So let's do another one of those. Okay, again, I want to go ahead and put it in the right form. So y is less than x squared plus 3x. I'm going to complete the square. I'm going to put the minus 4 out there. Okay, half of 3 is 3 over 2. So that's going to give me a 9 over 4. So I've got y is less than x plus 3 over 2 squared. And then I'm going to take the negative 4 plus the 9 divided by 4. And it's going to give me a negative 1.75. So when I go to graph it, I have a vertex at 1.5 and negative 1.75. So approximately right there. Now, it is going to open up because that is positive. Okay, if that has been a negative, it would have opened down. So I know it's going to cross. So then I'm going to use my program, my quad program, to find out where it crosses. So I'm going to put a 1 in for A, a 3 in for B, and a negative 4 in for C. And it crosses at the point at 1. Oh, something's not right there. Oh, because that's a negative. It should have been over here on this other side. Okay, so it's a negative 1.5 right here. Because remember, it's the opposite sign. So a negative 1.5 and a negative 1.75. So approximately right there. And then it crosses at positive 1 and negative 4. Now, notice there's no line underneath it. So this thing should have been dotted. So go back and erase it so that it looks dotted. It's less than, so it's everything underneath here. If it had been greater than, it would have been everything in the center. All right, then you have a little change up. If you'll notice, this doesn't have a y on it. It has 0. So it says to solve this, and you can do it one of two ways. You can do it by graphing, which is what we just did. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I'll change the 0 to a y, and I'll go ahead and complete the square on this. Okay, so since I've added a positive 9 there, I've got to add a negative 9 there. So I have x minus 3 squared minus 16. I hope I did that on that other one. Let me go back and look. Make sure I added the opposite. I did. Okay, I didn't do that on this one. So let me go back and do that here. So since that's a positive 9 over 4, that should be a negative 9 over 4, which is going to change this, and it's going to go farther down there. So I have a negative 4 plus a negative 9 divided by 4. And so I have a negative 6.25. So that's actually going to be down here, if you will. So that's going to change the shape of my parabola just a little bit, but not too bad. And then it's still shaded out here. So I thought I messed up on one of them on that one. Okay, let's go back to this one. Okay, so I've got the graphing going on. I know that I have the point positive 3, negative 16. So approximately down here. Okay, I can go, it's going to open up, so I know it's going to cross. So I can go to my calculator, use the quad formula, and put in 1, negative 6, negative 7. And it's going to cross at 7, negative 1. So right here and right here. It's a dotted line. Okay, and notice this one is greater than, so it's going to be all of this space in the center. Now, this one over here says solve by factoring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this x squared minus 6x minus 7, and I am going to factor it. So I have an x and an x. I have a 7 and a 1. My 7 would have to be negative. My 1 would have to be positive. And when I solve this, I get x is equal to 7, x is equal to negative 1. As I put a 7. Okay, so I have a number line, which is really my x-axis here. So I have a negative 1, which is a key point, and a positive 7. Remember those points right there? This was negative 1, this was positive 7. And I check to see which one of these work. Because remember, this is going to be less than 0. So when I plug in numbers to the left of the negative 1, like a negative 2, I would have to get less than 0. So I'm going to take negative 2, and I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to use my store button on this. And I'm going to get a positive 9, and positive 9 is not less than 0, so I know that that doesn't work. I'm going to plug in a 0. When I do that, I get a negative 7. Oh, that's right. Negative 7 is less than 0, so that works. When I plug a number into the right, so let me pick positive 8. And that gives me a 9 over here, which I have already discovered does not work. So notice that what I have is this section right here between negative 1 and positive 7 that would work. It's the same section that's shaded over here if I just pulled out the x-axis. So the number line here is more or less your x-axis over there. All right, let's do this one. Again, it says by factoring and by graphing. So let's do the graphing first. So I'm going to complete the square. So I have x squared minus 3x plus a 9 over 4 negative 10, and I'd have to add a negative 9 over 4 to it. So y is less than x minus 3 over 2 squared plus, let's see what that is, negative 10 plus a negative 9 divided by 4. It's going to be a negative 12.25. Okay, so when I graph, I have a positive 1.5 and a negative 12.25, and we'll just say it's down there somewhere. Okay, so 1.5 and a negative 12.25. All right, but then I'm going to use my quadratic formula to find out where it crosses. So I'm going to plug in a 1 for A, a negative 3 for B, and a negative 10 for C. And it crosses at negative 2, positive 5. Okay, it's going to be a dotted line. And it's less than, so it's going to be outside. Okay, so that would be solving this by graphing. If I solved it by factoring, I'm going to factor this. It's going to be x minus 5 and x plus 2. So x is equal to 5 and x is equal to negative 2. Same thing you have here and here. So I'm going to put it on a number line. And I've got a negative 2. I've got a positive 5. And I'm going to test to the left of negative 2, between it and to the right. So if I plug in like negative 3, I'm going to use my store button. And I'll put that equation in. So 7 squared minus 3x minus 10. And I get a positive 8. And positive 8 is greater than 0. So that works. If I plug a 0 in between the negative 2 and the 5, I get a negative 10 is greater than 0. That doesn't work. And so when I plug a 6 in, I get a positive 8, and so that works. Notice I get this space out here and this space out here, which is the same thing that I have from graphing. All right, so these, they just want you to solve by factoring, okay? No graphing involved. So you have an x minus 4 and an x plus 3 is greater than 0. So I have an x equals 4 and an x equals negative 3. So again, there's my number line. I'm not going to draw my graph. I have a negative 3, a positive 4, and I'm going to test by plugging in. So let's plug in a negative 4. I'm going to use my store button. And I have x squared minus x minus 12. And I'm going to get an, I'm going to get an 8 on that one. And 8 is greater than 0, so that's true. I'm going to plug in a 0 here, which is going to give me negative 12 is greater than 0. That doesn't work. And so let's plug in a 5. And that's also going to give me an 8, which does work. So I find that these spots work. So if you will, x is going to be less than negative 3, and x is going to be greater than positive 4. This one, I have x plus 7 and x plus 2 is less than 0. So x is equal to negative 7, x is equal to negative 2. If you were to graph it, obviously those are the two spots where it would cross. Negative 7, negative 2. Okay, let's check it out. Let's go negative 8. We'll store it. And I'll put the equation in. X squared plus 9x plus 14. And that's going to give me a 6. 6 is not less than 0, so that does not work. Let's plug a negative 5 in there. Which would be between those two. Negative 6 is less than 0, so that does work. And so then let's plug in like a negative 1, which would be on the other side of that negative 2. And that gives me a 6. 6 is not less than 0, so that doesn't work. So I know that x is greater than negative 7 and less than negative 2, because it's all this space right here. If I had graphed it, it would have been inside my parabola. Okay, your homework is page 382, 26 through 54 even.